Alright, welcome YouTubers. This is my kind of an offbeat looking at various other YouTube NFL handicappers. I've done this in the past. I'm now on Great Dane Picks, LibbyPicks.com or GreatDanePicks.com. So, let's get into it. And quickly, my topics will be what kind of criteria do you do to kind of compare, or how I'm kind of comparing. I like to compare myself to these other pickers that are out there. I originally done this in 2014, so I have a long list of pickers that I've been looking at or traced back then. 2014 was kind of a down year for many of us. The only year that I've lost money on NFL. But nonetheless, my research was back then, and I brought some of it forward as to people that I like for various reasons. And I'm always looking for the next greatest. There's a lot more pickers out there now that maybe don't have as much of a record or much viewership, much like myself. Maybe there's a couple winners in there. So I'm always looking to balance, some of those picks and versus the good versus the bad out there. So let's, I've got a lot of videos out there, and I've talked about, how do we actually compare cappers, and there's, it's really tough. I mean, it's not as obvious as you think, because, some people just pick straight up. They're kind of like office pool. I'm going to go through and say, okay, New England's going to beat Cleveland this week, and yeah, you're probably going to win that game most of the time. There's, 8 teams that win all the time are in the playoffs, right? And they beat up on the lower end of the NFL spectrum, despite the parity that they allege. So we always compare stuff ATS, because you don't go out and bet office pools in Vegas, professional style. I mean, there's other types of bets, but basically Vegas is spread betting, so we have to take into account spreads when we're factoring results. So even somebody who says, New England's going to beat Cleveland, you're going to have to compare it to the spread, right? At least in my world. Second bullet must be something the public can get a line on. So game time. I'm going to go into a little more detail about this, but it's something that, early lines, sharp lines often aren't released in the betting world. So then maybe they're available, obviously, and maybe there are some betting firms that take it. But if I look at like a Bovada or something, not all the games are out on even Wednesday sometimes, so some of our pickers are Monday. I'm like a Tuesday, Wednesday picker. Sometimes you go to Thursdays, especially with Thursday games nowadays, but some people will release even later than that. Obviously, game time is, except for the Thursday nighter, is Sunday, right? Sunday at 1, Sunday at 4, and Sunday at 8, and Monday at 8. So lines do drift a bit, and that makes a bit of a difference as you go through it, because those few points that it may drift, the games, certainly a percentage of games fit within those. So if you pick an early pick, then you would have won that, but it's not really verifiable, and it's really hard to keep a track of that. So people, I'm not saying people are honest or not honest, and they're doing their best job out there, but they're picking lines that aren't obtainable for the average person to bet, never mind the game time better, which is where I think what the advice for a YouTube channel would be, right? So that people can pick it up on a Sunday and go out and make their bets. But you can't get those lines. Spreads must be verifiable. So again, that's where I'm going to rely on covers.com. Not that covers.com always has, most of them are pretty legit, but sometimes those guys move and they just, they're a couple points off what if you look at Bovada, you're looking at something else, and your local lines that are out there, it's like, no, I mean, they're doing the best job they can. I'm not saying there's a wide variety of lines. Most of the lines are pretty similar across betting avenues. It's all kind of consolidated. But once in a while I get this weird line that they jumped, and it's way off what you could get, and then that game also has to fit in that criteria. Obviously if it's off, but it doesn't matter. That happens a lot too. And I'm also simulating payouts, because payouts are all over the board depending on what service you're using. So I always use minus 110. Is that attainable all the time? No, but at least it's comparing one to another. So covers.com and simulate good, bad, or indifferent. So I guess we can take a quick look at covers.com because, heck, why not? Where is covers? There we go. So this is last week, and you can see, if you follow my cursor, this was, the Chiefs ended up being minus 3.5. And again, if I go through people's videos, you get anywhere from, -2 to -4, or whatever the starting line, end line. There is a line history that you can go look up, but they don't really move a lot. But that's what I'm saying. People, sometimes you get these whacked out videos that say, I'm taking the Chiefs, it's a pick 'em, right? It's like, well, so they do the results as a pick 'em. Now, it didn't matter here, but clearly they covered by 4.5. But as you go through the covering down here, there's usually one or two games that were close, like this one here, cover by 1, right? So the Tennessee ended up being a -2. Well, if they were -3 at any point, that was a push. And if they were -4 at any point, then that was actually a loss, right? Depending on when you pick. So I have to go with the covers time. I happen to know that one was more of a pick 'em or -1 earlier in the week, so it didn't make a difference. But if you were picking Denver, but so every once in a while, there's out of the 16 weeks, who knows if this New England, by the way, was -6, if it didn't start off higher at -7, and -7 would have been a push, right? So that's where people start to get wins and losses in the reverse way, right? And something to always take a look at, because that when you look at what people self-report, obviously they're self-reporting off those numbers. So ignore props. I call OU a prop just because I've never seen people really, you can really boost your numbers. People get hot with OU, but at the end of the day, you think about that logically. We're talking about weather. We're talking about, turnovers are just unpredictable to a certain degree. So it's usually weather, offenses, defenses, and those are included. I've just seen people who, make really good numbers in a given season picking OU, but all of them eventually seem to crash back, and it's just not something I see people making a lot of money versus like spreads and money lines, legitimate comparisons of many factors of the team, not just how well the two teams together are going to score points. And parlays and teasers are, of course, very hard to verify. You get plus, you get 6.2 team teasers, you got whatever you got, parlaying, and I just kind of ignore that part of it. Not that you can't make money of it, not that they're not legit, but, I'm just comparing ATS to ATS. And the last bullet point I have down there is that the videos have to be kind of legit and interpretable. So, some people don't put graphics or text, right? And so they're just speaking, and I think of like El Presidor or something, it's like I can't, sometimes I have to watch their video 3 times and I really can't say, not pick, is that, how many knots was that, right? Who are you picking and what, who are you picking as a favorite? You can't even figure it out. And they're like, well, if it moves to, if it's -5, pick this, but if it's -4, then pick the other team, right? And it's like, well, I don't know how to interpret some of that stuff. Just give me a team, and even if you pick the spread, I'm going to ignore it. I'll go to covers. But they'll come back and say, oh no, and then occasionally I'll get a video where the next week the guy says, and the sports guy's done this, not often, but he done it. It's like, well, midweek I ended up, reversing that pick and reversing this pick, and I canceled. I didn't make that pick. I decided not, and it's like, so now I was a winner that week, right? And it's like, well, what does that do for your public, right? What to subscribe to you? I don't know what that is, right? So, whatever you put out there, as long as I can understand what the heck you're saying. Sometimes I can't understand people, and sometimes they talk and it's different. I probably do the same thing once in a while because it's tough when you're talking on the microphone here. But anyways, that's comparisons. Of course, the problem in comparing, a lot of people will overstate the lines. I've always wanted to put out a crack video that just said, every game I pick, I'm just going to be, I'll take New England +20, right? And everybody's going to, immediately jump on me and say, well, +20, New England's not they're not a 20-point dog. Nobody's a 20-point dog, right? I'm like, well, New England's also not you said they were -2, right? A 2-point favorite. Well, they're not a -2-point favorite either. You can't bet that, right? So what's the difference between me saying +20? And I'll have a great record, by the way, if I compare it to +20. It's just not legit, right? And because they overstate lines, they frequently overstate their results, right? That's where you get this. I was 26 and 23 and 5, right? That's my record, or whatever, even bigger numbers, 31 and 21. Then you actually, compare it to covers, which is what I'm doing here, and they're maybe they're 26 and 24 and losing money, right, instead of 31 and 21. Very frequent problem that people will compare to do their results to their video, which aren't legit lines, right? Problem everywhere. I don't think they're doing it, again, angrily. They're just saying, hey, that was the money, that was the information that was available to me at the day, and I should have been able to bet that, and that's what you do. And then, of course, I don't know whether, if they do pick, New England -6, I don't know if it goes to a -7, whether I picked them or not, right? And I don't want to go through that hard trouble. I'm going to say you picked them, and if the game time spread was -8, then that's what we're going with, right? Again, we don't know whether to speak money one. Do I do it in terms of money? Do I do it in terms of percentages, like you're a 60% picker? In terms of units, in terms of ROI, which is for me is a different calculation, because I got to figure in bankroll and what kind of bankroll you would need as a minimum to cover it, or as a general rule. So there's a lot of ways to do that. I tend to look at a blend of everything, but that's again, I'm talking about problems comparing two different pickers. Money is obviously the best one. Money one, because that's what we're trying to do, right? Win money. But not if you have to have a huge bankroll, then all of a sudden, the bets for the other guy could have been higher. And I'll go through that. And, one bad season, that's a problem, is that, it's hard to just look at one season. Well, everybody's allowed to have a bad season. Everybody will have a bad season. Everybody on my list has had a bad season, including myself, right? And so I haven't found that perfect person over multiple seasons, right? People do great on one season, but then they, so that's the problem with the new people, right? Is that, they get lucky, they come out of the gate, you see it all the time. Maybe they have a lot of OU or whatever, it's like, and you see that in the handicapping, the free picks like Wager Minds and Covers.com picks, contest picks, right? That people come out and streak. So there's no perfect rating system, so I'm just going to throw out what I like. And this is a kind of busy graph, and I know it's all 2014 data, but back then I used to play under the name Have a Ball on the YouTube. I still have a channel, but I just split off the gambling into the Great Dane picks. So I've been doing this for a while. I've been doing NFL since like 2011, but back in 2014, I was kind of getting into YouTube and wanted to look around the YouTube handicappers, and there wasn't a whole lot of popular ones. Certainly there's a lot more now. So I struggled a little bit, but I put together, unfortunately this is weeks after week 16, so I know there's another week in there, but for the most part, I did wins, losses, according to my results here, right? And then $110 bets, what you would have been net positive or negative, and then I did do the bankroll you would have needed to fully fund, and some ROIs, so even back then I was thinking in that regards. So I'm going to go through this list, and I know you're going to say, well, what does this mean, right? But I tend to believe I lost money this year, the 2014, and after over time, I tend to believe that was really odd NFL season in terms of picking. But there were some winners that year, but most people took a tank that year. Just, logic didn't dictate. A lot of weird upsets that year. At least that's my opinion. Maybe I'm biased because I lost. But there were a few winners that year. So the first line is not a real person. I call that the 9 and 7 Stig. That was a 56.3% picker. So they picked every game every week and fakely went. They were 9 and 7 against the spread. That would have been 144 wins, 112 losses. Would have resulted in $2,080 net positive, and the bankroll would have been 1 week's worth of bets, and it was 110% ROI. So nobody even came close to accomplishing that. But the number 2 on the list is Teddy Bear Industries. He was new, Cowboy Boom. He's one of my favorites that we'll go through a little bit, but he was NA, so he started in 2014. He didn't have any results in 2013 because I didn't have any videos out there, but he did really well. He went 34 and 21, which that's over 60%. So I know you're going to tell him, you're going to look at me and just say, hey, the number 1 was 56.3, and Teddy Bear is over 60. Well, it's 56.3 on a full schedule. So you can see how immediately that was my point, that the more games you pick, you don't need to have as high a percentage. I won twice as much money at 56% betting a lot of games. than as opposed to Cowboy Boom picking about 55 games. Got half the results, but still pretty impressive, right? But he was over a 60% picker, so this is why you can't just do percentages. You got to figure something out here. Now his banking need was 610, so he had a nice ROI of 180% based upon the minimum bank. You might want to build a buffer in there, but that's the numbers I ran. So really good returns, really good picker that year. Gino Piscante had a great year that year, although in my comment section he was 2 games under 500 in 2013 and lost a pretty good chunk of change. But this year he was 33-21, so 1 win behind Teddy Bear. So that's why he's $100 less, $990. He came out a little hotter or didn't pick as many picks early, so he only needed a bankroll of 440, so he had a pretty whopping ROI. So that was a great year for Gino. He's on my favorites list. TYT Sports Chris, I don't know why I don't follow TYT anymore. They used to be Chris and Ben, but they'd substitute some guys. But back in 2014, they were pretty popular. I'm not sure if they were on anymore. But he was doing well, 45-23, so he was plus 870. Decent ROI. Wake Up It's Football was a straight-up picker, so back then I didn't have as many ATSs, but I said, how these straight-up pickers, and these are guys, between him, Wake Up It's Football, and Franchise City, one of those guys played Madden in the background and just said, I think, he went through every single game, and I think, again, New England's going to beat Cleveland, and I extrapolated it to the ATS because he was not an ATS picker, but a couple straight-up pickers actually made money that year and did well, and Wake Up Football is one of them. Made 620, not as good as the best ATS pickers, but surprisingly good. Of course, they require a lot of bankroll because they played every single game and probably went down a little bit early, so you need more funding. So $2,300 of funding to get 620, 48%, but then nothing to snicker at, right? Geo Knows is the godfather, and he's got a large collection of YouTube pickers on his site. Kind of like his analysis, he was 35-31 according to me in 2013, won $90, so nothing to wake up about. But he was doing really well in 2014, 35-27, and made 530 and only need 460 bankroll. That ROI doesn't look right. Should have been a little over 100 that way, so I don't know what happened there. But, has some decent analysis. Not as good as a later guy that I'm going to list, but yeah, I still follow him religiously. And take a look at his ATS picks. Apple stock, again, this is one of my favorites, is to go out there and say, okay, so Apple was 98.93 at the kickoff in 2014, and that would get you, 20 shares for $2,000. And by the end of the year, it was up $283, those shares, so 14% return. So those are the people above that line did better than getting Apple stock, and everybody else did worse. Again, the NFL picking was difficult that year. Franchise City, below them, number 8, was a straight-up picker who did pretty well. Not, $130 total net, and you had a lot of money out there, but, it was there. And then you get this long cadre after that of people in the red, which are 9 and below. And these should be some familiar names, either from Geo Knows or just from NFL picks on YouTube. So the Football Guru was a couple games over 500, but lost money just a little bit. Pete Briscoe, CBS, was even and lost quite a bit of money. My monkey with a dartboard was, again, a fake one where I just only picked 4 games. I went 2-2 every week, so you were 32-32 through 16 weeks, and that's how much money you would lose. You'd lose minus 320, so I just say anybody could throw a dartboard, because these games are supposed to be 50-50 against the spread, right? The lock, I don't remember why I added him, but I guess he added. He came out, but, he lost money. Have a Ball was me. That was my multiple scheme, basically. I was playing martingales at the time, but I did have the idea for just those tier 3 multiples. I was 41-18 in 2013, so well off this chart. I would have been the leader in 2013-ish, depending on how other people did. At least I'd be at the fake stake, right? So 21-20. But this year I was 27-28 at that point, minus 380, so losing a chunk of change. I was 0-3 that week, and I think I was like 2-8 or something the next week, so I lost even more money. So that was a bad year for me. I was in the red. Philadelphia is a big Eagles fan. She's a straight-up picker. I think she's the first female on the list. Nothing. She was below 500, lost a ton of money. required a lot because you picked every week, right? As a straight-up picker. Schleg Daddy, straight-up picker, same thing. He was a little over 500. Maybe Philadelphia didn't pick every single game, or I don't remember. I think she was inconsistent on her picks, releasing her picks that year. Like she wasn't picking every week, right? Schleg Daddy did pick every week, and he was terrible. He's over 500, 5 games over 500. So, yeah, I'm a 5 game over 500 person, but you lost $630 and you acquired a busload of bank. So, not any good. My martingale was terrible at this point, and it got worse, right? So that was a big loss. Peace Picks was a nice chick who couldn't pick, right? She was well below 500. She came out pretty popular, pretty hard, but you're going to lose money with her picks. TYT Ben, terrible. Losing money. El Presidor, super popular to this day. And he'll tell you, I'm a 90% picker or 80% picker, and everybody jumps on and says, oh, he's the best in the world. But it's all pump in your chest WWE crap. He was 124 and 123, lost a busload of money in 2013. 118 to 116, basically a 500 picker, just like a monkey throwing a dartboard, right? Big loser in 2013, and I stopped following him after that, I'm sure. Yeah. A long video, sort of entertaining, but it gets old after a while, right? Hatbox Does Football, terrible. 20 to 27, lost a ton of cash. Bridgewater's Finest, slightly under 500. But you see the big jump, and he picked so many picks. You see the big jump from minus 1,000 to minus 2,000. You're going to lose your shirt. 22 is a favorite picker. So just picking favorites. You would have been 112 and 122. Again, that's sort of shows the volatility of, because usually favorites. I know dogs do better on the money, but usually just shows the volatility. So if you picked every game and you picked who was favorite, assuming it's not a pick 'em, right? Then you lost. That's how much you lost. So that's just a beacon. And then you had two people, Mole and Mears, who were on the same show, and they were both horrible, just absolutely horrible. So bad I almost considered making it an opposite. But when I went back and researched 2013, Mole at least was 65 and 69. So if you reverse that, you would have been 69 and 65. You're not going to make any money doing 69 and 65. So the reverse didn't work. It would have worked this year because those guys are just terrible. I think they went to podcast after that. But I just want to bring that in because that was my genesis, and that covers a lot of people that you're going to see out on YouTube that are probably still picking. Maybe they have good years this year. I don't know, but that's that between the 2 years where they weren't picking well or whatever, then I don't see them as contributing anything. So who do I like? And again, I broke it into a couple camps. I definitely like watching the comedy, interesting people. So Gino is hilarious. And he had a great year in 2014. He was way up on my list. Of course, he sucked eggs in 2013. Either late 2014, early 2015, he went to private picks. You have to pay for his picks. And he'd release like one game but in 2016, he's back to releasing a full set. So that obviously didn't quite work out for him. I think Gio had subscribed to him and released his numbers in there. I think they were subpar, much like he was in 2013. In 2016, he's atrocious. He's way down. You can just go look on YouTube right now. But very funny guy. Just wouldn't pick his picks. Gio knows his godfather, so I still kind of follow him and is just looking for people that would do well but he kind of gave up on the stats this year, so I'm kind of disappointed. Again, this is doing a lot of work, right, to haul these stats in. He's a slightly above 500 picker. I think he was 2015. I had him down as 33 and 36. So you lost. He was under 500 and lost some money. I know the prior years he'd won a little bit on my chart, and in 2016, I think he's up a little bit. Let me get that number out. So yeah, Gio knows this year is, he's 25 and 26. Oh, I have him as 25. He's listing 28 and 25 through 13. I'm 25 and 26, so he is a little under 500, but he won all 3 games last week. So he's going to be 28 and 26. And he'll report it as more than that, 31 and 25. So same type of realm that he's been forever, which is slightly above 500. Not a lot of money to be made, but he's got some analysis in there. I wouldn't follow his picks. So I got a couple people I got on the Real Deal list, and the number one on the Real Deal list, of course, knocked it out of the ballpark in 2014, was Teddy Bear Industries, and that's the guy with Cowboy Boom and making that. And it's kind of a joke, but the good deal is he's got the picks listed in the title, and his videos are like no more than like a minute and a half, right? And Chicago this and Chicago that. But he's a heavy favorite picker. If you go look, it's going to be this year. It's going to be, the big guys, right? The Dallases, the New Englands, so he's the opposite of an underdog picker. But he's got great instincts, and he blends it out. And his back numbers, I know he's doing. I think he's 31. Well, I'll talk next slide, because he's definitely on my next slide, because I'm going over multiple years. And the other guy I recently got into was the Sports Guy Show, and I think I drone on. Well, this guy. But drone's on forever. It takes, and he doesn't list, he doesn't list them. So I got to go through like a half. So I might have missed a few picks along the way, because I'm trying to skip. I went through a crash of watching 2 years of him. And this year he's all teaser, and teasing lines everywhere. And I just did it as an ATS. So he's kind of tough to follow, and he doesn't really say which teasers he's putting together in a combination. Like I'm supposed to just pick any two, right? And in which case you'll probably lose your shirt. But he's like, I'm 181, because he's got OUs, teasers. I'm 181 and 81 or something. So it's like 100 games over 500. And he's picking 2-team 6-point teasers. So you would think that he's making busloads of money, but we'll see. He's actually doing great in 2016. But I went back and researched, and his ATS. He was mostly ATS in 2015, and we'll get to that. But he does have some really great instincts and calls. So I do enjoy. It's kind of a little bit of salesman, a little bit loudmouth, not as bad as El Presidor, because he's actually backing up decent numbers. But he'll repeat himself over and over and again. It's like, man, just get through with it. And of course, Great Dane picks, right? That's who I am, and not in there for the comedy, but I'm in there for the picks, right? So this is actually a little bit of 2014, 2015, 2016. We saw 2014. Again, this covers Game Time Line, trying to interpret videos. Teddy Bear is really my competition, and I just can't shake that I can't beat that. Well, I'm beating him, but not beating him. I'm right on par with each other. So we know in 2014, I'm going to put him at 2,000 a game, because he doesn't pick that many in a given, like 5 or 6 in 1 week would be a big one. He's usually 2 or 3 picks. You can see his records in 2015. He was 19 and 26, so not too many games, right? We're talking below 50 games. But his record this year is 31 and 16, 2016 so far through week 14, I think. So he's a 65% picker, and I'm going to give him 2,000 a game. So his profit is like 24 grand this year. Now, in 2015, he had a terrible year. 2014, he was near the top of my list, so he won about $18,000 doing the same thing. So really, 2014 offset 2015, no matter what dollars per game you're looking at. And so his profit has all been on this one. So at least he's showing a profit. He did a losing year, but he's showing a profit, and a nice healthy profit of like 24 grand over those 3 years. So yeah, he's just tough to beat. He's got great instincts. I guess he mostly picks against shitty teams. By picking when they have really good matchups with really good teams, and ends up winning, except for 2015. Sports Guy Show, we already had a long commentary about him. You can make a drinking game out of tough games, and wild and woolly and blah blah blah, and it goes on. But he's entertaining to me. But it takes a long time to get through his videos. So I didn't do 2014 because I just couldn't marathon it. 2016 was really got me interested, because he's really exploded in number of views. So that's why he showed up on my radar. He had decent viewing in 2015. I don't know what he was in 2014, but he's really exploded, like over 1,000 views in 2016. And his record that I calculate is 90 and 73 ATS. So that's pretty good. 55% picker. He picks every game, which is a death nail. I mean, that's an indicator of trouble. Because it's just hard to pick all the games and get a high percentage. And he also picks them on Monday, which is pretty surprising. It's pretty impressive to start with, but you can't get the lines, right, that I was talking about before. So, but he is 90 and 73 is nothing to shake at. I'm not sure I could do that well, picking every single game. that's not the way you handicap. But it only translates. I'm going to put 1,000 a game because you just really with 200 picks a year versus under 50 for Teddy Bear. It just you have to go at a lower scale for the same bankroll or ROI punch or whatever you want to call it, right? Unless you got infinite money. If you got infinite money, but then of course you just play teddy bears with more money, which is what I'm looking at here. So his profit this year is 9,000, 8,800, right, ish so far. But when the 2015, when I did that, he was 115 and 113, so he was below 500, 40, just a tick, right, 48% picker, but that's way below what you need, and that would have been a loss of 17 grand, right, so almost 17 and a half. So I don't know if he's profitable in 2014, but we're going to take a little while to get that profit back up. But maybe his teasers work out. I doubt it. Again, that's propish to me. He doesn't state them, so can't figure it out, right? Doesn't state what the results are, other than you went 8-0 on parlays this week, right? And it's like, well, great, but which were the plays, because you had losses in there, right? And or you had losing teams, so don't tell me you didn't pick them, right? So. And me, and so I did lose about 12 grand. I'm going to do 1,500 a game for me because I'm in between there. I'm doing 60 games a year or whatever, right? Ish. And so I lost about 12,000 in 2014, but my record in 2015 was a 68, 42, and 19. And of course, remember in 2013 I was very similar. I think I was 41 and 18. So very similar numbers in 2013, but I'm not going to include that. I lost in 2014, so just like everybody else, I had a losing year, but I profited huge, 29, almost 28, 29K in 2015, and I'm profiting this year so far. And again, I'm very disappointed in this year to be a 58% picker, but 28-20 on my multiple scheme. Hoping that doesn't crash, and I'm really hoping it picks up. But nonetheless, so I balance that out, and I'm whatever. Plus 32 and that per thousand in profit. Remember, Teddy Bear is plus 24 and Sports Guy is negative. But pretty impressive this year. So they're both beating me this year. But looking at the long term. So, I'm always looking for more and more YouTube pickers. Not that I want to spend hours upon hours watching YouTube videos and writing down their names, but I've always liked to benchmark, particularly with Geo. Followed him for since I started YouTube's. Myself and anybody else who's in there that isn't totally disastrous, that has a couple years out there or something. Even if you're up and coming, those are legit picks for this year. If somebody's up and coming, like I said, people do well for a year, like Teddy Bear did or Gino, and then the more you look, they eventually wipe out on you. And I'm trying not to wipe out, but if there's somebody that you're missing, that I'm missing on this list, I'd be definitely. I'm always looking. I can't catch every single pick, and they're exploding in terms of number of people, but they don't get a lot of views, and then whatever. I don't have a lot of views, so it is what it is. But I appreciate you sticking with me through this. This is just something I go off on a rant and try to compare. There's no comparison service, and it does take a bit of time to go through this and compare it back, but I can just write them down. I got a little macro that helps me do that, so I can bust it out a little quicker or just do it manually, just to show you where I sit and why I think that, without jinxing myself, which I'm doing, right, that I've got legitimate claims out here to be a fairly good picker, and continue to follow me. Of course, I'd like to get into, I do have money picks. I do have what it is. But this year on the NFL, I decided to go back full steam, releasing the picks, try to gain some market share or whatever, just some people, some following. And hopefully, if you're watching this video, I appreciate it. I know this is long, but probably a little less in length than one of those Sports Guy ones, right? All right. See ya.